Fort Davis, Texas Territory, summer of 1878. The trading post smelled of tobacco, animal hides, and desperation. Sarah Mitchell stood in the center of the dirt yard, her face turned toward the ground, her dark hair hanging limp across shoulders hunched with shame. 20 years old, unmarked, unwanted. Her father stood beside her with his hand on her shoulder like she was a mule he was trying to sell. His voice carried across the small crowd of traders and drifters. She cooks. She sews. She don't talk back. He paused, then added the words that made Sarah's stomach twist. And she ain't much to look at, so she won't be running off with the first man who smiles at her. A few men chuckled. Others looked away. Sarah's face burned. The pock scars on her left cheek felt like they were glowing. Her crooked nose, broken when she was 12 and never set right, throbbed as if remembering the fall. Her thin frame, her too wide mouth, her eyes set slightly uneven. She'd heard it all before. Ugly as a mud fence, plain as dirt. Wouldn't marry her if she came with a dowry. Her mother stood near the wagon, arms folded, jaw tight. She didn't look at Sarah. Hadn't looked at her in weeks. Not since the youngest daughter, Emma, had gotten engaged to the banker's son. Emma with her blonde curls and small waist and face like a painted doll. Sarah had stopped looking in mirrors years ago. Anyone interested? Her father called out. I'll take cash, trade goods, or a strong horse. The silence stretched long and thin. Then the crowd parted. He walked through them like wind through tall grass, silent, inevitable. He wore buckskin pants and a vest open at the chest. His long black hair tied back with a strip of red cloth. Copper skin. High cheekbones. A scar running from his temple to his jaw that somehow made him more striking, not less. He stopped 10 feet from Sarah and looked at her father. How much? Her father blinked. You speak in English? The man's dark eyes didn't move. How much? Well, I was thinking $20. Or a good rifle. The man reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out a small leather bundle. He unfolded it slowly. Inside were 3 turquoise stones, polished smooth, each the size of a thumbnail. The crowd murmured. Even Sarah's father straightened. These are worth more than $20, the man said. His voice was low, steady. But I will trade all 3. Her father's hand shot out. Deal. The man didn't move. On one condition. What's that? The man turned his gaze to Sarah for the first time. His eyes were the color of wet earth. He didn't flinch. Didn't look away from her scars. You will never speak of her again. To anyone. You will not say her name. You will not tell stories about her. As far as you are concerned, she never existed. Sarah's throat closed. Her father hesitated, then shrugged. Fine by me. The man placed the stones in her father's palm, then turned to Sarah. He didn't touch her, didn't grab her arm or pull her forward like livestock. He simply said, "Come." And because there was nowhere else to go, Sarah followed. His horse stood tied near the edge of the post, a gray mare with intelligent eyes. He untied her, swung up into the saddle with one smooth motion, then extended his hand down to Sarah. She stared at it. Calloused, strong, steady. She took it. He pulled her up behind him. She had never been this close to a man before. She could smell sage and smoke and something else, cedar maybe. Her hands hovered near his sides, not sure where to hold. Hold on, he said quietly. She gripped the back of his vest as the horse moved forward. They rode west toward the mountains. The sun beat down on her neck. Dust rose behind them. No one called after her. No one waved goodbye. After an hour, he stopped near a thin creek shaded by cottonwoods. He dismounted and offered his hand again. This time she took it without hesitation. He knelt by the water and filled a canteen, then handed it to her. Drink. The water was cold and tasted of stone. She drank until her stomach ached. He watched her, then said, My name is Nate. I am a chief of the Cheyenne Apache. Sarah nodded but didn't speak. Her voice felt locked somewhere deep inside. You will live with my people, he continued. You will work same as everyone. You will learn our ways. If you do not wish to stay, I will not stop you from leaving. But no one will harm you, not while you are under my protection." He paused, then added, "You are not a slave. You are not property. Do you understand?" Sarah's eyes burned. She nodded again. "Good." He stood and turned back toward the horse. "We ride until dusk." The Apache camp sat in a hidden valley surrounded by red stone cliffs. Wickiups, low, rounded shelters made of brush and hide, dotted the clearing. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children ran barefoot between the structures, laughing in a language Sarah didn't know. When they arrived, the people stopped and stared. Nate dismounted and spoke quickly in Apache to an older woman with silver streaks in her hair. The woman's gaze moved to Sarah, lingering on her face. Her expression didn't change. Nate turned to Sarah. "This is Desba. She will teach you." Desba stepped forward and gestured toward one of the Wickiups. Sarah followed, her legs stiff from the ride, her hands trembling. Inside, the shelter was dim and cool. Woven baskets lined one wall. A small fire pit sat in the center. Desba handed her a clay bowl filled with something that smelled like roasted corn and meat. "Eat," Desba said in halting English. Sarah ate. It was the first time anyone had offered her food without comment in years. That night, she lay on a woven mat in the corner of Desba's wickiup and stared at the smoke hole above. Outside, voices murmured. Somewhere, a drum beat slow and steady like a heartbeat. She didn't cry. She had no tears left. But for the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. The first week, Sarah tried to disappear. She fetched water before anyone asked. She scrubbed cooking pots until her hands cracked. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. The women watched her but didn't speak to her. The children giggled and whispered when she passed. The men ignored her entirely, except Nate. Every evening, he would walk through the camp and stop near the fire where she worked. He never stayed long, never said much, just a nod, a glance, a quiet question. "You are well?" "Yes." "You have enough to eat?" "Yes." Then he would leave. It was Desba who finally broke the silence. One afternoon, while Sarah was grinding corn on a stone metate, the older woman sat beside her and said, "You work like you are trying to earn the air you breathe." Sarah's hands stilled. "You do not need to do that here," Desba continued. "You are not a burden. You are a person." Sarah's throat tightened. She shook her head. "I'm not. People don't. People are fools," Desba said simply. "Beauty is a trick of the light. It fades. What you do with your hands, what you hold in your heart, that does not fade." Sarah looked down at the corn, golden and cracked beneath her palms. "My daughter died 3 winters ago," Desba said quietly. "Fever took her. She was beautiful. Everyone said so. But she was cruel. She mocked the children. She refused to help the sick." Desba placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You are not cruel. I see that." Sarah's vision blurred. "Come," Desba said, standing. "I will teach you to weave." The days began to blur together. Sarah learned to identify edible plants, to tan hides, to weave baskets so tight they could hold water. Her hands grew strong. Her back straightened. The children stopped whispering. A little girl named Kaya started following her, mimicking the way Sarah braided leather strips. Another child, a boy with a crooked leg, asked her to help him carry firewood. She did. He smiled. One evening, as Sarah was mending a torn blanket, Nate approached. This time he sat down across from her. "You are learning quickly," he said. "Desba is a good teacher." He nodded, then hesitated. "Why did your father sell you?" Sarah's needle froze mid-stitch. She didn't look up. "Because no one wanted to marry me." "Why?" She gestured vaguely toward her face. "I'm ugly." Nate was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you know why I chose you?" Sarah shook her head. "Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who had survived something. I saw strength." He paused. "And because I know what it is to be judged for the surface of your skin." Sarah finally looked up at him. His scar caught the firelight. "They call me the scarred one in some camps," he continued. They say I am marked by bad spirits. They say I am cursed. He smiled faintly. I stopped listening years ago. How? Sarah whispered. By deciding that my worth is not measured by the eyes of others. He stood, then looked down at her. You will learn this too. 2 months passed. The air grew cooler. Sarah's hair grew longer, and Desba taught her to braid it with beads and colored thread. One morning, a group of traders arrived at the camp, white men with pack mules and rifles. Nate greeted them cautiously. They spoke in broken Spanish and rough English, negotiating for hides and woven goods. One of the men noticed Sarah. Hey, he called out, grinning. You got a white woman here? Nate stepped between them. She is Apache. The man laughed. Apache? With that pale skin? Come on, chief. What did you do, steal her? She is under my protection, Nate said, his voice dropping low. Do not speak to her. The man raised his hands in mock surrender. Easy, easy. Just curious. But Sarah had already turned away, her hands shaking. The shame she thought she'd buried clawed its way back up her throat. That night, she sat alone outside Desba's wickiup, staring at the stars. Nate found her there. You should rest, he said. I don't belong here, Sarah said quietly. They're right. I'm not Apache. I'm just... You are someone who chose to stay, Nate interrupted. That is enough. Sarah shook her head. You don't understand. Everywhere I go, people look at me and see something wrong. Something broken. Nate crouched beside her. Then do not let them look at you. Let them see what you do instead. She turned to him, confused. He gestured toward the camp. Kaya brings you flowers. The boy with the crooked leg walks taller when you are near. Desba smiles more than she has in years. He paused. They do not see your face anymore. They see you. Sarah's breath hitched. And I... Nate hesitated, then continued. I see a woman who survived shame and learned to plant her feet anyway. I see a woman who could have left but chose to stay. I see a woman worth 3 turquoise stones and more. Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. Nate reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed a tear from her scarred cheek with his thumb. You are not broken, he said softly. You are a warrior who fought a battle no one saw. And you won. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself lean into his hand. Winter came hard that year. Snow fell thick and fast, covering the valley in white silence. Food grew scarce. The hunters came back empty-handed more often than not. Sarah worked alongside the women to stretch every scrap of meat, every handful of grain. She learned to make soup from bones and roots. She sewed blankets from scraps of hide. One night, a child, Kaya's younger brother, fell ill. Fever burned through him. His mother wept. Desba tried every remedy she knew. Nothing worked. Sarah sat by the boy's side through the night, pressing cool cloths to his forehead, whispering soft songs her own mother had sung to her once, long ago. She didn't know if they would help, but she stayed. By dawn, the fever broke. The boy's mother embraced Sarah and wept into her shoulder. Thank you, she whispered in broken English. Thank you. Nate stood in the doorway, watching. When Sarah met his eyes, he nodded once. Later that day, he approached her near the fire. Walk with me, he said. They walked to the edge of the camp where the cliffs rose high and red. The wind was cold, but the sun was bright. Nate stopped and turned to face her. I did not bring you here out of pity, he said. I brought you here because I saw something in you I recognized. A refusal to bend. Sarah looked at him, her heart pounding. I have watched you these months, he continued. I have seen you learn our ways. I have seen you care for our children. I have seen you become part of this place. He paused. And I have come to care for you. Sarah's breath caught. If you wish to leave, Nate said quietly, I will take you wherever you want to go. I will not hold you here. I don't want to leave, Sarah said, her voice steady for the first time in her life. Nate stepped closer. Then stay. Not as someone I bought. Not as someone I saved. But as someone I choose. Every day. Sarah reached up and touched the scar on his face. He didn't flinch. "And I choose you," she whispered. He kissed her then, soft, careful, like she was something precious. And for the first time, Sarah believed it. They were married under the full moon in the old way. Desba wove a blanket for them, red and white, and draped it over their shoulders. The people sang. The drums beat. Kaya danced and laughed. And Sarah stood beside Nach, not as someone ugly or broken or sold, but as someone chosen. Years passed. Sarah learned the language. She taught the children to read English. She became a healer, sought out when fevers came or wounds needed tending. She and Nach had no children of their own. But the camp was full of children who called her mother in their own way. One spring, a trader came through, a man Sarah recognized from Fort Davis. He stared at her for a long moment, then said, "I know you. You're the girl they sold." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "No," she said. "I'm the woman who chose to stay." The trader left without another word. That night, Nach carved something into the wooden post outside their wickiup. Sarah ran her fingers over the symbols. "What does it say?" she asked. "Here lives a woman worth more than turquoise," he said. "Here lives a woman who grew strong in the dark." Sarah leaned into him, her scarred cheek pressed against his shoulder. "I used to think beauty was something you were born with," she said quietly. "Something you either had or didn't." "And now?" Nach asked. Sarah looked out at the valley, at the children playing, at the smoke rising from the fires, at the red cliffs glowing in the sunset. "Now I think beauty is something you build," she said. "With your hands, with your heart, with the people who choose to see you." Nach kissed the top of her head. "Then you are the most beautiful woman I have ever known." And for the first time in her life, Sarah believed him. Sarah died. They buried her on the hillside overlooking the valley. Nach carved her marker himself, a stone etched with symbols that told her story. Not the story of the girl who was sold, but the story of the woman who chose to stay, who healed the sick, who loved the unloved, who refused to be defined by the cruelty of others. The children left wildflowers on her grave every spring, and Nach would sit beside the stone, his hand resting on the earth, and whisper, "You were always beautiful. I just had the eyes to see it." The valley remembered, and the wind carried her name like a prayer.